This is an unauthorized Tom Waits impersonator, and you are listening to Discography Discussion.
Sorry, I had nothing to say after that.
Neither did I.
Dude, we are so much better at this in person. Seriously, I mean, being able to play off of each other, like I gotta take my hat off right now to Kellum and to Toomey and to Travis and to Scott. You know, like the fact that they just made this work.
Yeah, well, they've had plenty of practice at it too. This is the first time.
I also have no video, and that's my bad. I don't have a webcam, no lighting down here, so I'm just it's like I'm just basically on the phone with you guys.
And if a crazed German scientist has offered you the flying car, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe. That is Dan. That is Jeff. And that was my intro.
I liked it.
I think it was, very awakening, like for the soul. Because you sometimes,
Novocaine for the soul?
In light of current
soul
events.
coffee?
In light of current events.
Oh, wrong one.
I feel as if sometimes we have to ask ourselves the really deep questions. And one of those deep questions is always, and will always be, if a crazed German scientist walks up to you and says, I have invented the flying car, and I'm going to give it to you. But there's one catch. You have to decide, do you just take the flying car or don't you? So let our listeners think that over.
I think that's going to be a topic for another time.
Yeah, possibly.
Dude, welcome back. Where you been? Or where are you? Because I know right now you're not actually here.
No, I'm not. I'm at home. I may or may not be wearing pants, actually. But I'm here. I'm sitting in front of a computer screen. I've got Jeff pulled up on Messenger, and me and Joe have show notes that we're like ghosting each other on. So I mean, it's kind of like I'm there. Like if I was dead and I was a ghost and I was haunting the podcast, it would be like this.
In a dark, dark room, there's a dark, dark Dan, and that dark, dark Dan has on no pants.
Yeah, maybe that could be a thing. I am kind of illuminated by the computer screen though, so there's that.
Yeah, when we don't have video for our podcast, it's because Dan is not wearing pants. So
most of the time, yeah.
And if you think about how many times we haven't had video, that should let you know how many times Dan doesn't have pants on.
So send us your tweets about Dan not wearing pants and how upset you are that he's not wearing pants, so we can't do video.
Who said anybody was going to be upset?
Well, I mean,
I think that's a real selling point.
For Twitch or for YouTube?
Oh, see, I don't use Twitch. Maybe I should.
I mean, I've heard stories, pray tell, of that being a thing going on right now. It seems like everywhere you look, people are just like, I'm not going to wear pants and I'm going to harass you, and people are getting upset about it. And I'm about to be like, dudes, YouTube's been a great 10 years. The gravy train's coming to an end. Not that I think that's going to happen anytime soon, but, that is going to be how it ends. It's just going to all get out of control and everybody's going to say, I'm done.
A gravy train sounds delicious.
An actual train made of gravy?
Yeah.
So we're talking about this now. So obviously in my absence, this show has completely fallen apart.
See, Brandon Kellum thought the exact opposite. He thought that it was actually excelling in your absence.
Well, I would imagine that Brandon Kellum spends 90% of his day thinking about Brandon Kellum. So
I thought that was a lead singer thing, because that's exactly what you do, Dan.
I'm not a lead singer, Jeff.
You used to be.
Yeah, used to be. But I don't, because,
Are you retired or on hiatus?
Those who can't do, teach. And those who can't teach, criticize on the internet.
So you've taught Brandon how to think about himself all the time? Is that what you're saying?
I'd like to think that I've taught Brandon how to become a real lead singer.
Okay, well...
Sounds good to me.
So the next album's going to be great.
Tonight, since you two have run off the rails already, I'm going to...
off the rails on a gravy train.
So tonight we are talking about Invent Animate.
Yes, we are.
Which I knew nothing about.
Animate.
Yeah, and actually they just announced not too long ago, they dropped the comma.
No!
Yes.
That is like literally the most newsworthy thing I could imagine a band announcing. I mean, my God. Honestly, I would be up hot and bothered at night thinking about oh God, I hope they don't ever get rid of that comma.
Is this like when Fear Before the March of Flames just became Fear Before?
That was just laziness, I think.
Or it was going with the times. Like, everybody just walks up to us and says, dude, I love Fear Before, and we just finally went with it.
Well, so Invent Animate is a very pretentious name anyway.
Because you're not really inventing anything, or just because it's pretentious?
It's just pretentious in that, like, it's trying to evoke a certain emotion in me that it's not really invoking. Because, like, so what it's trying to invoke, I think, and if the band's listening to this, we're totally down for the interview. But the whole thing is that, like, that invent, comma, animate. So, like, what you're thinking is, like, this has got to be progressive, techie metal. And you're not far off. However, the emotion that it creates in me is more of like oh God, all these songs are going to be 15 minutes long and they're going to be boring as all hell.
But what you ended up getting was songs that are 3 to 5 minutes long that are, in some cases, boring as hell.
I didn't find them boring. Actually, the band's pretty good. So what you have here is this. So this is kind of a newer band that we're talking about. Being old guys, it can sometimes be very hard to kind of push aside the thousands of older bands that did it right first, and to actually delve into a newer band. So with Invent Animate, they are, I mean, their first release was in 2014. So I mean that's pretty new. And then they had a second release in Still World, and that's it. So like we're kind of on the bleeding edge. When this band blows up, we will be the first podcast to talk about them.
Yeah, I think they had an EP back in 2012, I think.
Yeah, there was a couple songs on that.
Yeah.
I just don't like talking about EPs because I'm lazy, you know.
Other than just bringing it up just to mention that it exists,
it is a thing that exists. You should check it out.
Right. But outside of that, I have no intentions on discussing it any further unless you guys want to.
Well, before we get into Invent Animate, I'm going to go ahead and say to everyone that is listening to this podcast now, either on your phone or in the car, if you're on YouTube, thank you for listening and thank you for subscribing. We are on Google Play. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. We are on TuneIn Radio. So if you have an Amazon Echo product, you can say to it, Alexa, play the latest episode of Discography Discussion, and she will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and it lets us know that you are listening. And I know Dan is about to tell you to leave a 5-star review. So I'm going to let Dan tell you to please leave a 5-star review.
Well, I would just like to keep this gravy train rolling. So for me, you can't imagine my joy when I signed into iTunes and I looked at my own podcast, because that's what pretentious, self-absorbed people do. And I discovered that we now actually have enough. We actually have reviews on iTunes, which is just like mind blowing, because like I kind of just assumed that nobody cared. Like I care, but I don't expect anybody else to care. But we actually got some 5-star reviews. We got more than 5. Which, if you didn't know, is kind of like pulling teeth. Most people, you know, they enjoy podcasts, they listen to them, but they're busy people, so they don't have time to go in and stroke our ego by adding 5-star reviews. But we did get some. We are now a 5-star average podcast, and now that we've said that out loud, somebody's definitely going to give us a 1-star, but that's cool. Yeah, so if you like the podcast, please, a 5-star review really helps us out. It helps us show up quicker in search results, and it helps people spread the word of Discography Discussion to people that want to hear it. So like for sure. And we love comments. We love to hear from you guys. We've been getting a lot more of them lately, and it's really cool, I think. I mean, so I'm actually going to read a couple of them, if that's cool, Joe, if we have time for that.
Absolutely. We got an iTunes review and a YouTube comment, and I think there was actually a Facebook comment. I was having some difficulty finding it on my phone, so you might be able to pull that up faster than I can.
Yeah, I could pull that up. So the first one I'm going to read is our most recent iTunes review, and it's by and if I am pronouncing this wrong, I'm so sorry, but the name on it is Shyman Ryman, I think. And his review was, just found these guys, listen to the Contortionist episode, also one of my favorite bands, and I love that you guys appreciate every album like I do. Instead of looking and harping on the changes you listen to, you listen to them and appreciate them. And absolutely, dude, I definitely appreciate that. We love the Contortionist like so much. And yeah, like absolutely, and that is something that we do try to do. We try not to harp on changes too much, although it does happen.
In Flames.
Yeah, if you listen to the In Flames episode, that's a really good, that's a really good example of that. So I mean, we're not super positive all the time, but we try to be if we can be. And so yeah, that was a really good review, man. It really helped us out, and we appreciate you listening. And definitely feel free to comment and talk to us in the future. We're really accessible. So
grab that Facebook comment real quick. I'm going to read this YouTube comment. Drywood Creek on YouTube about a week ago, and I believe this was on the Scott Mellinger episode. This is gold. Took me 3 days of spare time to finish, but entirely worth it.
I bet.
And to that guy...
That was the Neurosis episode. Yeah, that was with Scott.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening. I know it was a bit of a beast to get through that episode, but it seemed appropriate. So, thanks for listening, and tell your friends. discussmetal.com.
Yeah, so we got a Facebook comment from, and again, if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, dude, I'm so sorry. This is from Josiah Heiberg. Josiah. It's Josiah Heiberg. And if I'm pronouncing that wrong, please correct me. That says, catching up on the podcast here, as you guys mentioned that there isn't much music in this sort of spacey, atmospheric, but still heavy vein. Have you guys heard of Rosetta? To which I actually did respond. Yeah, dude, I love Rosetta. And we'll definitely be talking about them in a future episode because we will be. And he also said, also a suggestion, I'm loving the episodes where I'm at least somewhat familiar with the band, but the episodes with bands I'm not familiar with, I find really difficult to get into. It may not be possible for licensing issues, but throwing a song or two in from each album would be rad. So that is actually a pretty common complaint that we get is, we do play music from the bands while we're talking. The issue is that, again, licensing is a thing, and artists they deserve the royalties for the music that they put out. So if we have a video on YouTube, for example, or if we are monetizing our podcast, which we try to do to get our 23 cents a month or whatever it is we get for doing the podcast. We do monetize that. So ethically, it's not okay for us to play an entire song from a band and then talk about it and then monetize it because at that point we're basically like releasing that to the public. And if we were just talking about singles that were released already online, sure, that's probably kind of more of a gray area. We could probably throw those in. However, we are, kind of into hardcore discussion on albums, so we really go for the deep cuts sometimes, and sometimes the surprise of a new album is to get to hear those deep cuts. So in this particular case, we would end up probably having to pay way more money than we actually have currently to be able to provide that type of content. So what I'm suggesting and what we're going to try to do, and we may actually go back to the old episodes and do this as well, but I'm going to go through Spotify or Apple Music. I know I use Apple Music. I think Jeff uses Spotify and Joe uses Google. So we're triple covered. But what we'll do is we'll make playlists. Recommended playlists for bands that we talk about. And honestly, like I would recommend if we do that, I would recommend actually listening to the playlist before you listen to the episode. And I know it's more work. You definitely don't have to do that, but that is kind of one of those things where we don't want to cross a line. We don't want to get a call from a lawyer or something that we overstep our bounds. So we for the time being, we're sticking with, maybe little 10, 15 second clips of songs in the backgrounds that we talk over. Just because that's that doesn't really fall into infringement territory.
One way that people can help us out, if they want us to be able to provide that type of content, is to help us out on Patreon. One of the things that we are able to do with any money that we receive is not only improve our content, but it is to expand it. And it would be feasible to be able to purchase licensing or to get that type of licensing if we had that financial perk, which we ask for and we're very thankful for. I know right now we've got a contributor and we're very thankful for that. So, patreon.com/discussmetal. We've got some perks there. My favorite in particular is if you pay, I think it's $25, you can play a game with Dan online. So if you would like to lose at Doom against Discuss Metal Dan, pay your $25.
Yeah, considering his
it doesn't really
handles.
sound like that good of a deal when it's said like that, but yeah, sure. And obviously we don't want to be that podcast that's always begging for Patreon and stuff. So I mean, we have a Patreon. If you feel like we're worth throwing some money at, that'd be awesome. But the pod. If you just want to enjoy the podcast for free, like you have been doing, then aces. The only thing I'm asking for is just leave us a comment. Come talk to us. We're chatty guys, and we love to talk. So talk to us.
We love to talk, or you love to talk?
I love to talk.
I know you do.
I think between last week's sunburn, Jeff, and this week's barbecue with
smoke inhalation. Yeah, for 10 straight hours.
You've got this Tom Waits thing going on. Like I'm wanting to give you some Shakespeare.
Give me some Shakespeare and let me read it.
Yes.
I feel like we could just do Tom Waits covers for the remainder of the
Can
evening.
we just change from Invent Animate
completely.
and do Tom Waits tonight?
No, because I really like
do
that.
But
I like the second. I like the
band,
second album from these guys.
Okay.
So we gotta trudge through the first one so we can get to the good stuff.
Well, Dan, since you were gone last week, and we talked about System of a Down with Brandon Kellum while drinking large quantities of high brew coffee. So high brew coffee mocha, it's amazing. Freeze it, it's delicious.
Tasty.
Do you have any thoughts on System of a Down?
Well. So I'm not like the biggest System of a Down fan. I don't hate them. I don't, they're not like Pantera to me. But System of a Down is a really cool band for sure. I really like the energy. I like the energy in Serge's vocals. Especially on the first two. The first two records are honestly the only ones that I'm like super familiar with because like there was Steal This Album, but that was just like leftovers from another album and. It was a thing that existed, and it was okay, I guess. But I really love presentation in albums. So to get a basically like a CDR in a sleeve, or like a CDR in a blank case, it's not my cup of tea, man. I want lyrics I can kick back and read. And I'm sure you can get a better edition or whatever. But like, should I have to pay more money from that? Like you saved production costs. On producing this like minimalistic package, but you're still going to charge me the same amount as if it was a brand new CD. So like, no, dude, sorry. I'll do the first two albums and that's it. But that being said, Toxicity definitely is a huge landmark album for me. That like demonic, almost howling voice at the beginning of Prison song is just that's my stuff there, man. That's cool. And I just always liked how insane the band was and how I just kind of never knew what they were going to do next. And I mean, Serge was great as a vocalist, and then the guitars were just, I mean, really kind of sick for that style. They wrote some truly heavy songs, and I think nobody really talks about that side of it very much, that they were kind of leaps and bounds above some of the other new metal bands as far as heaviness goes. But
so you would call them new metal then?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And again, it's not really a term that holds up to scrutiny, but it's I would call them that just because again, it's more of an image thing. I'm gonna kind of steal what Toomey said about new metal in that it was kind of more of an appearance thing. And but I really liked what you said, Joe. On that discussion too about how like it was kind of a weird contradiction that they're so anti-government and everything and so anti-military that like so many people in the armed forces love them.
I never really addressed that. They're about the everyman. Why do we always send the poor? That's why there's that's why there's that connection with the individual troops.
Sure, I get that. But that was pretty late in their career. I mean, even before that, though, you know, because that was a few years later. BYOB, you know, that was on their later stuff. And
I guess I was just trying to use that as an example on why.
Sure, on that point. Yeah.
Well, if you remember, that was a time too, and yes, I remember. It's not too far gone that I don't remember why we were so active with the military and people enrolling. But if you also remember, that was the time of documentaries and military criticism, and specifically Fahrenheit 9/11, where
sure.
I believe the claim that was being made that I thought they were trying to cash in on a little bit, and cash in is the wrong word, I do apologize, was the idea that the lower section of our society couldn't afford to do anything after high school but enlist in the military. And it was almost like it was set up as a trap. Like, your only option is to enlist. And it just happens to be that right now, at that time, there was the war in Iraq. September 11th had just happened. So that criticism of why do you always send the poor? What they're saying is, yes, the rich bureaucrat is going to send you to war, but he's not going to fight it himself. But I remember at the time, there was a lot of criticism about how there wasn't an option to go to school because you couldn't afford it. Your only option was join the military.
Sure.
Which is a very old way of thinking, you know, 30s and 40s, back when you'd go get your GI Bill and then go to school, because school didn't cost $60,000. And I'm going to avoid that tangent for now, because I'm sure Dan will pull it out later.
Well, okay, so like just to give my own spin on it, and then we'll wrap this part of it up, because you guys talk for an hour and a half about System of a Down, so that's history now. But the only personal spin I'll really give on that is that for me, being such a huge lyrics guy, there were some System of a Down lyrics that I thought were like just brilliant, you know. But like, I mean, some of them, on the other hand, were just almost completely incomprehensible to me, in the sense that they were just so kind of wacky and out there, and like they were trying to use metaphors that didn't really work. And it just seemed like, you know, and this is kind of where the nu metal thing comes in, because it's like I wouldn't really describe them as like a rapping band or anything, but it just seemed like the lyrics were a little bit more musical, in the sense that they were written in such a way that they were to rhyme. And I'm not a huge fan of those types of restrictions on songs. I'm not saying that like the lyrics have to be like, I had a dog and he walked down the street and got hit by a car or whatever, you know. It's just weird to me, you know. I don't
Sometimes
get it,
you get prison song, and then other times you get Cigarro. And we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I mean, or like Shimmy, you know. Like, Shimmy's a really cool song, though. This is maybe not the best example. But, right, yeah, System of a Down, cool band. We're done talking about them. So,
Invent Animate. Jeff, tell me about Invent Animate.
They're a fairly new band. They are out of Texas. And,
yeah.
It's not the...
just like Pantera.
Yeah, they're not that kind of out of Texas band like Pantera. But yeah, they I think they're fairly atmospheric band. I think we're going to hear from Dan that the lyrics are weak, because even I looked at the lyrics and thought they were weak, and Dan's starting to rub off on me. I actually, like, when I'm going through the discography, I feel like I have to look at him, because I know he's going to give me shit if I don't now. So,
right.
But yeah, their lyrics are not the greatest. They're sometimes contrived, sometimes they're cliche. But, you know, with, you know, Dan having a lot more responsibility going on right now, I thought it was good that we do something with a smaller discography, and just something that it was easier to go through. And I think if you just kind of put these guys on in the background and just go with the flow, they're a real good listen. Some of their stuff is really good.
I agree.
But it's not something you want to sit down and really be analytical and, you know, and really listen to the lyrics, because that's just not who they are. I mean, there's a couple of pretty good songs on the first one. I think Luna is probably the biggest standout. There's a couple others that I really like too. What is it? Forest Haven is really, really good, I think.
Yeah.
And the Desperate or Calm. That's probably my 3 on that one. But as a collective whole, I think it does pretty good. I think the growls are killer. Some of the higher pitched screams, I'm like, it's okay. That's not my cup of tea. That gets a little whiny for me, I guess. But man, whoever's doing the deeper stuff has fucking got it. It sounds great.
I listened to it for the first time this week. I got the text from both of you. We were going to be listening to Invent Animate. And I pull it up. I listen to it and I think, okay, it sounds like 2014. It's metalcore. It's degent. It's melodic metal. There's a little bit of Hope's Fall, a little bit of space rock going on. There's good growls. There's good melodic singing. I'm sure if I listen to it more, I'll start to remember it. But the problem I have when I listen to bands like this the first time, I don't really retain it. I have to go back and listen again. You know, if I didn't listen to Plea for Purging as many times as I do, some of their best stuff I just completely would miss out on. And at first, they reminded me of A Plea for Purging. My initial thought on them was, this is A Plea for Purging and the Contortionist doing an album together.
That sounds great.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that concept.
I don't know, Joe. I mean, what you're describing sounds a lot better than what we actually have here.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I had kind of a. It was kind of weird. Like, so I listened to the first record, and they were a band that was new to me. They were Jeff's suggestion, and so I listened to both records initially, and I think each one is only like 37, 38 minutes long each. So it's not like a major time commitment or anything. Actually, it kind of is though. Whenever you have a new baby at the house, but I somehow made it work.
Yeah, that's why we're going this. We were thinking of you, buddy, doing our best.
Well, and so these were good records. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's easy to listen to something once and not really be into it and be like, this sucks, because I think like the average person online when they're getting into a new band, they kind of decide within the first couple of minutes, I guess, and maybe that's actually more time than people actually spend, but you spend like maybe that first minute or so deciding whether or not you're into it. And I at first I was not into it. The first time I listened to it, I wasn't really, I really wasn't vibing on it too good. And but it wasn't because it was bad. I mean, they've got a lot of talent. So like what I hear a lot of is like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the Contortionists' Exoplanet album. It kind of stays, like, definitely be in that same genre. But there just seems to be so many different elements to it that there are there's a lot of melodic segments, a lot of like, kind of technical, just to be technical moments, especially on the first record. And I think maybe what that is it's just kind of a little bit of immaturity in the sense of like, this is our first album.
Yeah, and they're still trying to find their way.
Right, and just like the name kind of implies, this band is definitely trying to evoke an emotive feeling from you, like an emotional feeling from you. And I think they do succeed in that musically, because what you have is you have kind of a mix of different styles. The deathcore is there, a lot of breakdowns and guttural growls and actually kind of a more traditional like hardcore scream in there, which actually reminds me a lot of the band Silent Planet. I kind of get a vibe from Silent Planet from that, and it's really good. Like, I mean, his voice is very emotional, and it sounds really good with the melodies that are being played. I mean, the band is obviously talented, and I've definitely heard a lot worse debut records, and they do a really good job of capturing like a little bit of Hope's Fall, a little bit of Contortionist, in there, and I love the spacey theme, and I love kind of the atmospheric sound that's in it. But I guess the only question I have when I get done listening to this first record especially is, why am I not more into this than I am?
Nothing really stands out to me.
Yeah, not on the first one. I wish they would have led with Luna, instead of ended with it.
Yeah, this would have benefited greatly from an altered track listing.
Yes, I agree. I know we've had people on before that have talked about changing up track listing to improve albums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I didn't really think about doing that till just now, but maybe if I sat down and actually made my own track listing on this one, I'd like it quite a bit more, because I think there's 3 really, really good tracks in there, but they're all on the second half of the album, and I always
just space those out more. Yeah.
Yeah, I never understood why sometimes that happens. It's like, oh crap, I'm trying to think of another band that did that here recently, because I used to tell you guys how much I liked them, and it was like Skeletal Arise 1 and 2, and I can't remember the name of the band. Oh, Heart of a Coward. Like okay. They're all like straight up like hardcore and kind of like groove metal at the beginning, and by the end of it, they're a total prog metal band on the second half of their newest album. And that's kind of what I'm getting on this one too, is they're it's like, okay, here, this is what we think everybody wants to hear, and then here on the back end, when nobody's listening anymore, we're going to kind of try to experiment and put out what we think is good instead of what the producers want us to put on. And I think they're right, and then producers wrong, or whatever. Or I don't know exactly what the thought process is, but I just never understood that. It seems like with bands like this, after it's like they put out what they think everybody wants to hear, and then they throw the good stuff on the end, which is more of what they are. That happens a lot, it seems like, with these kind of bands.
Well, I think there's a certain sense of originality that isn't here, and I think that's what bugs me about it, is that there's a lot of really good stuff in there. The screams are great, the growls are great, the breakdowns are great. Drumming is actually pretty above average. The guitar work is technical, it's melodic, it's atmospheric. It has all the ingredients to be good. And like I said, I don't know why I'm not more into it than I am. And I think what it really comes down to is, no matter how technical and how good you are, if you can't write songs that people are going to remember, you're going to have a bad time. And I think especially in 2014, I think deathcore bands, inspired by bands like The Contortionist and inspired by Between the Buried and Me, this whole idea that we're going to take metalcore and we're going to make it bigger than it ever has been. We're going to push out the boundaries. We're going to make it atmospheric. But at this point, I think that idea was so oversaturated that it was really hard to really pull off every time. And I think they tried really hard here to incorporate elements of everything that they were into, and everything that they bring to the table is performed very well. However, there's nothing really new or original about it. So it's hard to have an emotional connection with songs that kind of seem like they were written more to appeal to a specific audience, more so than they were like, this is how I feel and I wrote a song about it. And I could be completely wrong about that, but as far as their motivation goes, but I can kind of only go off of what I hear. And what I hear is a band that wants to sound like The Contortionist, and they want to sound like Hopesfall a little bit, and they want to sound like Between the Buried and Me. And so all of the members, so when they form the band, all of their members are a cut above the average players. Like anybody can sit down in the basement and play, As I Lay Dying riffs, and carve out, somewhat of a melodic metalcore sound or whatever out of that. But I mean, these guys really, the actual players, the musicians are very above average in a lot of ways. However, there's also still 100 other bands that are out there that are trying to do exactly what they're doing.
Right.
And so in this particular case, I think this is just a first album blues kind of thing, where they're throwing everything that they have at us. And if the writing of a first album, because I believe that the writing of a first album isn't quite the process that a writing of a second album is. I think you've got a lot of time to write your first album. I mean, the idea is, right, you have your whole life to write it. Right. So, and in a lot of cases, you end up with an actually like a very good band, or like a very good first. Like, how many bands have an amazing first album and then everything else they have is garbage? Like there's a lot of that. But in this case, it's actually kind of the inverse, because I kind of feel like this band hasn't been around forever. And so they've got all these influences, and they're literally just like, we need to get all this stuff out on the table and get it together as quick as we can. And so I think there was more time spent with making sure that the technical playing was good, that the sound quality was good, and that everything about the band, sounded really good, looked really good. But I think the songwriting itself really suffered from that.
So is this an example of it's mediocre as a whole, or did what you and Jeff said earlier apply, and that just a straight up track listing change might improve the content?
Yeah, it's not going to improve the actual songs. It's going to make the album flow better, and it might leave a better impression on you. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be salvageable with what you have. And so I think with this first album, there just a little bit more thought could have gone into some of the actual songwritings, because like these songs are meant to evoke emotion. It's almost like the band is trying to seem more passionate than it really is, and that's where the lyrics kind of start bugging me a little bit, because like the music can be super emotional at times, and I love that. And so it's hard for me to say that like, oh, this isn't a good album, because it is a good album. But when you read lyrics that are just kind of like, every word is kind of like it's just like, look at the track listings. Like, for example, like soul, kind of a weird word. Nature hold, weird. Nocturne, lost faith. Courier, moon phase, forest haven, eventide, native intellect, half-life, Luna. These are all like words that you throw in because you're trying to sound like you're smarter than you are. Like look at all these big words that I'm using. And so with the lyrics, I find actually kind of a lot of cliche in them. I don't know. It's really hard to describe it. I'm not going to read all of the lyrics or anything, but there was one particular song that jumped out at me, where it was just like, wow, really? Like, I'm trying to find out where it is. Yeah, it's it's the first song, Soul. It was the first one I ever heard, and it just, there's a segment of the song where just like, he's like, the song in the distance, let me down gently. I'm not blind this time. Love, let me down again. I don't believe a thing. Love, let me down again. I won't believe a fucking thing that I hear ever again. And it's just like, this is all being played, this is all being screamed over like super technical, emotional music, but the lyrics are like kind of very amateurish, but they're like trying to be vague. And again, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I read these lyrics and I don't believe it. Like, I don't believe the passion is there.
Yeah, see, that's where, we can always tell that you and I are very different types of listeners. I'm all about the emotive, atmospheric feel of a band, and you're looking, a layer deeper and trying to read between the lines, literally, trying to figure out what the hell they mean whenever they're writing their lyrics, and whenever it gets kind of cheesy or cliched or contrived, I mean, we know you'll be the first one to call it out. And you're right. The lyrics are not this band's strong point, especially on the first album. But
yeah, the second album they did a better job.
Yes, they did. As collectively, altogether, they did.
You mentioned the generic song titles or the visual.
They're not
song
generic
titles.
Song titles. They're very
they're trying
hip
to be
song
too smart.
titles. Like trying to sound really cool. Like, hey, we should, we should have a song that's called Soul.
Or we should have a song called Moon Phase. Like,
right, yeah,
like they're trying to be visual.
Because like I can see it. I can see him like drinking some beers and being like, "Dude, moon phase," right? That like sounds so like the contortionist exoplanet, you know?
It reminds me of a band that I'm actually a fan of that I'm going to pick on because they're very easy to pick on. It's a band called the Birthday Massacre. The members started playing music together when they were in art school, when they discovered color theory, which, as I understand it, and Dan actually will know a lot more about this than me, and Jeff will too. Color theory is this idea that color visually invokes an emotional response. So if you want something to make somebody feel a certain way, you should stick to a certain color palette. Well, of course, this band learns about that. They start a band. Everything is purple, but then you get these kind of on-purpose song titles like Horror Show, Violet, Red, Blue, Black. I'm reading them in front of Jeff. He can confirm. The Dream, Nevermind, Lover's End. Like, it's almost like they sat down and said, all right, so we're going to write a song called Happy Birthday, but it's not going to be that Happy Birthday.
Sure. Yeah, I get it.
But it's that it's literally, let's sit down and let's write a song called this.
Does anybody else find it weird too that like the first two albums, or the only two albums really, that the first album Ever Changer and the second album Still World, like what's up with the moon? Like they're almost the same cover except for like one's in winter and the other one's in like autumn, I guess. And like one of them's got a dog in it or a wolf in it, and the other one's got a person. It's like, is the moon their logo?
It's like the Incubus guy from back in Science, right, yeah. And Pardon
or
Me,
the Disturbed guy. Yeah. Like, I found that very strange too, that they would go with like that type of aesthetic. And again, it all kind of falls into like they're kind of like taking notes. Like, what do all the great bands that play this style do? Like, and like Joe was saying, like with color theory, like I've got the album pulled up in my Apple Music right now on in my iTunes, and it's the background is purple. Like of the album, like when I'm looking at all the tracks here, and it's all purple, and so it's like, again, it's like really like they're trying so hard to sell me on this idea that they are creating a specific like emotion, and I don't believe it with these songs. I guess is the only way I can really put it. Like Luna was cool because of course it was cool because they love the moon, right? And all that. But it's weird because like there's a certain sincerity and cheeseballness about like the way the Contortionist did Exoplanet, where like all of those lyrics and really all the Contortionist lyrics were all like straight sci-fi, and that was cool. And it was really neat how they did it, and it was kind of original. At least it was original to me. I mean, I'm sure like YouTube commenter number 7 or whatever, there were 175 bands that did this before the Contortionist, but regardless of that, their passion was good, and it was cool, and it kind of came off cool, even like a little cheesy, but like cheesy and like we're so into it we don't care. But I kind of feel like everything with Invent Animate is very like carefully chosen. It's almost like if they had just kind of relaxed a little bit and just kind of wrote the best songs that they could write. I think this would have been a really like a landmark album, because I mean, like obviously they can play,
Right. Well, I do know there was a fairly large member change comes when Still World came out. They dropped, I think there was their main guitarist. And it seems like maybe that was part of the problem, is that there was, I know it's probably not the right thing to say, but too many Chiefs and not enough Indians kind of feel.
Sure.
I feel like we're not going in a million different directions at once on Still World. Mm-hmm. It feels a lot more cohesive. It flows well. The track list seems much better as well, I will say.
It's almost like they tried it again. Like, let's do the same thing again, only better.
Better, right. And they did, and that's kind of, we talked about that with the last episode too. Mm-hmm. with System of the Down, there was a lot of, all their stuff was very similar. It's just like it's similar but better. I mean, I think that's what verbatim what Joe said on the last episode.
Yep. And, from album 1 to album 2, there's almost a direct correlation between riff ideas, but it is almost impossible for you to argue and win that the songs on Toxicity are not better than they are on the self-titled System of Down, if only because they've been fleshed out more.
Oh, they're way better.
And I would say the same thing. And I would say the same thing about Still World.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the clean singing is really good on Still World. I think it's much better than it was on the first album.
Is it more prominent on Still World, or did I imagine it?
No, I think it absolutely is. I think they tried to do more melodic, clean vocals on Still World, and I think they did a good job with it. On Everchanger,
like it's almost like we're putting these in because like people expect like how cool would it be if we threw some clean vocals in here, but we're not sure if we can pull them off, so we're not going to like make it a focal point.
Yeah, you see that was on Everchanger. I just wanted to hear the growls the whole time. I think that would have fit a whole lot better for that entire album.
Absolutely.
I every time that they'd start doing like that, the mid vocal, screams and stuff like that, I'd be like, that. He's good, but it just doesn't fit the music. I was like, those growls could just go on all day long, and I'd be fucking eating it up because I thought it was phenomenal. So I don't know if it's the lead singer or because I know the drummer does vocals too, but again, I'm giving props to whoever does the growls because they are. I love them. I don't know what it is, but man, I have a big connection with them. I think they're the best part of any of the vocals on either one of the albums, personally.
Yeah, they are good. They are a little derivative of other bands, but I mean that's just kind of what That's like criticizing Nile because the vocals sound like Cannibal Corpse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like,
right.
But it is very well done, especially in a wave of like. I mean, I've heard really good bands that don't have good growling vocals. Look at the first Between the Buried and Me album. Right. I mean, his vocals are horrible on that. Just horrible. Like, it gets way better on the next album. Like, some dudes must have sat him down and been like, look, buddy. But,
you gotta learn how to breathe, man. Come on.
Right. So, in that regard, yeah. So, like, I guess we're moving on to the second album. Because
2016, Still World.
2016, so, very recent. And at the same time, this is not, I as far as I know, and granted, I spend a lot of my time listening to like old music, so this is hard for me. But like
the old fogey you,
yeah, and so like for me, this was interesting because I feel like the whole technical deathcore thing was like a really big like between 2010 and like 2015. So in 2016, like either they're just continuing on a fad or they're just like, no, this is legit like what we sound like, and so I think it is more sincere here. The lyrics are a little bit better. The songs are better. The emotion is more real. The clean singing absolutely adds like so much more to them. Whereas like on the first album, it was there, but it didn't really like.
It was like, yeah, like you said, it
wasn't rocking my world. There was no like, because like to me, clean singing, I'm not saying it always has to be a chorus, but like there needs to be like some sort of like actual hook to it, to where it's something that I'm going to remember about the song. And I think that's where these songs succeed more than they did on Everchanger, because they are they're a lot more dynamic, and I remember the changes a lot better because of that kind of like assistance from the more melodic vocal side of it.
Yeah, there's a purpose for it here. It's not like you said that the first album that was tacked on because they felt like that's what was expected.
Right.
In this it's actually it's an element. It's it's another layer and it fits. You know, it's not like it was, somebody tried to jam it in place. This feels more like where it should be. And I think part of the reason why I kind of wanted to do these guys is because there was that progression. And I think we should throw in, something a little different every now and again and have a band that's, still, that's kind of new, and we'll see where they go. Maybe whenever they have their next album, we'll come back and revisit them for a few minutes, and see if they've continued to go in the direction that I hope they go in, because I think this second album was a big step up. I don't think it was necessarily the case with listeners. Mm-hmm. I still think that there's more people that I'm just going off of like Spotify stuff, just how you have the listings of, the
stats,
the stats of, what songs are in. And I still think Luna is by far their most listened to song. And there's a couple others. But from the first album that are still more off of Everchanger, that are still more listened to than Still World. But I think as a collective whole, Still World is, I think it's a great album, but then again, I'm not a big lyric guy, but as a, as an, atmospheric and an emotional listener, I really, really like this album. I think they go through really good waves of, of emotions, and I was really able to connect with it. And it's, I don't really dislike any particular song on this album, which I guess that's really what it was for me. I guess I'm an old school listener. I want to listen cover to cover. I don't want to listen to a song. I want to listen to an album. And I find this album, quite listenable from cover to cover. Right now we got, we're listening to a little bit of probably my favorite song on the track called White Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
For the
cover.
Yeah. And it's, exactly.
And that's cool. Those are the kind of touches that you need.
Right. Right. But, this is one where the clean singing, the melodic clean singing does its job. I think they do a good job with it.
This is the closest that this band comes to having a single.
Oh, no, it is a single. I think they even have a music video for this, actually.
I have no doubt.
It's the Luna of this album. Yeah, it's.
Right.
But if you notice, it's song 3. It's not the last song on the album.
Right. Well, song 3 always needs to be your best song. Because song 2, if song 1 and 2 are good, song 3 like really cements it. Right. If song 1 and 2 is bad, then song 3 might be what keeps people listening. So it's it's definitely it's an old strategy, but man, does it work.
Yeah, I think it really works, and I do think the first 3 songs are the best 3 songs on this album.
Right.
Personally.
And for some people, that's all you need.
Right.
I'm an album guy too, so I really don't like to just shuffle or.
It drives me nuts. I share my Spotify with my wife, and she loves herself some pop music.
Right.
And she'll hit play on like the whatever pop channel that she'll set, pop radio channel she'll set on Spotify, and hit and then random on some playlist.
Gotcha.
And then I'll go back in and I'll hit play, and I'm like, this doesn't fit.
It's like riding in the car with Dan.
Yeah, it doesn't fit, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I'll pull it up, and I'm like, oh shit, it's on shuffle. No wonder this doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And it really does. I mean, like, it drives me nutso when people listen to an album on random. I was like, you totally miss the concept and the point. In most instances, whenever a band has input, there's a sincere reason on why there is the song placement that there is, because they're trying to tell a story. So trying to, and you listen to that out of order. I mean, go ahead, go pick out your favorite movie, and then start on chapter 9, of that Blu-ray. Then go to 4, then to 15, and then back to 1. And tell me if it makes any fucking sense. It doesn't.
Well, people take movies as a much more serious art form than they do music.
Well, that's their fucking problem. They should learn to do.
Isn't that right Quentin Tarantino's entire filmography, though?
Right. Yeah. Well, absolutely.
Maybe I'm not as big of a Tarantino fan as everybody else, because I don't necessarily dig his movies. So maybe that makes sense. You just might have explained why I'm not a Tarantino fan. We've discovered something.
Tarantino.
Jeff likes movies to be real simple, like so that he can understand.
Yeah, give me Michael Bay all day long, motherfucker.
Did we just come up with the first official Jeff discography discussion T-shirt? Tarantino films. It's like a movie on shuffle. I hate it.
Right.
We might have.
Yeah. Well, and so it's obvious that a lot more thought went into this, because it's not unusual for bands like this to put out a record every year. So seeing a 2-year difference is kind of refreshing in the sense that, like, you know that some time was spent on it. And yeah, I'm sure that entire first year was spent, excessively touring.
Right.
Like that's your bread and butter. That's your take home. That's why you're here. But the fact that it seems like a lot more time went into the actual writing of the songs to make them into actual songs. The biggest issue I have with like deathcore and metalcore, like in general, is that there's a lot of either like super repetition or there's not enough repetition. Meaning that, like, something me and Buddy always talk about is like, this band will play the coolest thing ever for 12 seconds and then they will never play it again. But like that melody, that breakdown, that particular time change, like that could be somebody's hook, and like that could be what causes somebody to be like, wow, man, that was a really good song, or that really made me feel like this, or whatever. And like there's a lot more of that on Still World.
Yeah, like the melodic clean vocals. I mean, they're shared between White Wolf and Celestial Floods.
Right.
They both have that same kind of feel to it.
Right.
And,
so I mean, I think
and it makes sense. I mean, it flows from song 3 to 4. I mean, there's a purpose to it. Again.
Right, and this strikes me as the kind of band that is very aware of their weaknesses, and they've gone to the point of actually trying to correct those problems,
which is great. I mean, you got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, I know what my shortcomings are, and either A, I'm not going to do this part anymore, or I need to improve it. But I can't keep doing the same thing because I'm not going to get the results that I want.
Right. Well, and it's like there's this whole idea too of like the mindset on the first record was we need to make a record, and then I think on Still World it was we need to make a great record. And the two are very different. I mean, obviously, everybody in a perfect world, everybody would want to make a great record every time. But I understand that, maybe you got a record deal quicker than you thought you were going to get one, and they want something quickly.
Well, Kevin Smith said about movies, or about bad movies, nobody spends money to make a bad movie on purpose. And of course, Dan pops up and says, "What about every Troma movie ever?" But
it didn't start that way.
But what he meant was everybody tries their best to make a hit. It just happens to be that most of the time we fall short, and hopefully it's good enough that people enjoy watching it enough to make our money back.
Right.
And music is the same way. Everybody wants to make a good album.
Right. Actually, I just had a thought, since we were talking about, the first albums and all that kind of stuff. With, it makes me think, you have all this time, and for like Everchanger, we're going to use that as an example, since we're talking about this band. You have all of these years, you have all of this material, and you end up trying to pick out the best individual songs that you have. But it doesn't, it doesn't make it a better collective whole. I think, and I think that's why maybe their sophomore effort sounds better, because I think they picked like a theme and they went with it. Because they only had a year, because like you said, they were probably touring like fucking maniacs for to support their first album. So they had 12 months to write another album. So they had to literally focus themselves and look at it a little more in one particular area and then kind of let everything else fall by the wayside because you don't have time to do anything else. And I think that in this particular instance, it's helped this band out a lot that they got focused because I think, like I said, I mean, I really, really enjoy Still World, and it's the reason why I wanted us to do this because I mean, I knew Everchanger was, you could tell that the talent was there, the potential's there, and and Still World is an excellent sophomore effort in my opinion, and like I said, I really can't wait to see what else these guys do because the songwriting's better. The lyrics are better. I mean, they're still probably not where Dan wants them to be, but they're definitely
they're not fantastic, but
they're moving in
better.
the right. Yeah, they're moving in the right direction at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's a great album just to put on and to chill or whenever you're doing something else. It's great background music, but there's enough hooks. There's enough stuff that's memorable in it that it's not going to be like put it on the background and then forget what it was that you just listened to. You're like, oh yeah, I know what that is because there's enough good music there to make it memorable.
Sure.
So are those your final thoughts for now on Invent Animate?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm like pulling a halfway Joe. Instead of putting it in the beginning, I'm going to put them in the middle.
We're near the end because this is pretty much
true.
it.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Dan, what about you? Your final thoughts for now? I say that because I know this band is still active. So
right.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, I'm when they put out new stuff, I'm going to check it out. I think the potential is there. I think as good as the second album is, as good as the first album is, this is still a band that I think is still kind of getting its toes wet as far as carving out a good sound because where they stand right now, they're kind of like, and this is gonna sound mean and I apologize and it's not what I'm trying to say, but like they're kind of like Veil of Maya but like not as good, and so like they just kind of need to work on that. And when I say work on that, I don't mean try to sound more like Veil of Maya or try to sound like, Born of Osiris or The Contortionist or whatever. I think that they have come a much bigger step closer to carving out their own sound. And I think they just need to kind of pull everything together. And I think a third record is going to be really interesting from them. I think this band absolutely has an exoplanet in them. I'm still waiting for it.
And I would say that this is another band. We've talked about The Contortionist. Best example we've done lately. They are an album band. They are not a song band. This is for the audiophile metal fans among us that like to sit down with their awesome stereo systems, Dan, and listen to records in their entirety, Jeff, and appreciate them for what they are, Jeff, and love them for what they are, an entire product, which is me. So I guess I was talking about all three of us. This is one that we sit down, we light candles, we open beer, and we enjoy. And if that is what you're looking for, like the Beatles said, it's getting better all the time. And I'm looking forward to the next one. I'd also like to point out that track 9 on the first record is called Half-Life. Well, it's just over 3 minutes long, so I think if you take the square root of that, it turns into Half-Life 3. So can we determine that Half-Life 3 is confirmed?
No comment.
Well, Dan,
I'm not allowed to say.
Oh, so you don't know is what you're telling me.
Yeah,
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
I never said I didn't know. I said I cannot confirm. Well,
let me just call up Gabe and we'll talk about it.
What is your album of the week, Dan?
My album of the week, I can't actually pronounce the name of, but I know there's a pronunciation out there. But I'm listening to the Pristalis by 100 Suns. This is a band featuring members of Norma Jean, most notably their lead singer, Corey Brannon, and Every Time I Die. And
that sounds interesting.
It's good stuff. It's really good. So if you're a Norma Jean fan or you're a Every Time I Die fan, you're gonna like everything that these. You're gonna like these. You're gonna like them. They're good.
What about you, Jeff?
Actually, I went a little weird, and also it's also a little bit of indie pop mixed in with it. Actually, a lot of indie pop. There's this really interesting band out of England called Sleep Token. Just if you get a chance, go into their backstory. I think they've done a pretty good job of being a little mysterious and throwing some weird shit out there. And they all have as singles out there so far, and I think their best two are probably Calcutta and Nazareth. I have no idea when they're going to actually release an album. But I think what they've probably been best known for, a couple years ago, they did a cover of Hey Ya, the Outkast song. So yeah, check them out. Watch it with the videos. I think that really adds to it, and I think that's probably what I got interested in it. Is that it's been so long since I've actually like said, "Oh, you need to watch the video to add to the song," because videos just generally don't matter anymore. And with these guys, I think they do a good enough job of thematic portion of their videos to add to the music. So if you want something that's at a different speed, still got a little bit of dark hauntiness at the end of their songs, but it's pretty much indie pop. Check out Sleep Token, just if you want to change the pace.
Well, see, now I feel like you're challenging me because I'm torn between actually recommending The Birthday Massacre or the one I was actually going to do. So I'm going to save that for later and say that my album of the week this week is The Bat Out of Hell 2 by Meatloaf.
Nice.
That's wow.
Because I love me some Meatloaf sometimes. And that is one of my favorite albums of all time.
Dude, there's nothing wrong with that, man. I like Meatloaf. Shit, I can't tell you how much Meatloaf I listened to in high school. Let me put that. I listened to a lot.
Meatloaf was out when you were in high school?
Yeah.
Jeff's old.
And maybe.
Well, before we go anywhere, Dan, since you're gone and you'll be, well, technically you're not gone, you're just not here. We have a lot coming up in the next month or so that we can talk about. Let's talk about our future plans and our future bands, because I know when you make your triumphant return to the studio, we're going to be talking about Sepultura.
14 albums, boys. I hope you're ready.
We're going to be talking about Intronaut.
There we go.
Yeah.
And what are we doing on the 26th of August?
We're going to be attending the Rockin' Pod Expo that's in Nashville. I think it's in Nashville. I have to read the flyer again.
Yes, but it's anyway, in Nashville.
There's going to be tons and tons of rock metal podcasts there, recording live, and we're going to get to hang out with Josh Toomey. He'll hang out with you guys. I don't know if he'll hang out with me after what I said about Dimebag Darrell, but
we might have to keep a 9-foot gap between the two of you.
Right. So there could be like a barrier there that we may need to have. But I think it's going to be a good time. There's going to be a lot of like vinyl. There's actually going to be a whole bunch of vinyl dealers there. So like there's definitely going to be some good stuff to pick up there.
Oh, man, you shouldn't have told me that.
Bring money, Jeff.
Bring your money bags, Jeff.
Oh, my God. I'm going to spend too much damn money now.
I know, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. I think we're going to get to meet a lot of cool people, and it's very exciting. There's going to be all these podcasters that I love and respect that are going to be there, and I think it's going to be I think it's going to be too much fun. Yeah, and I can't wait. So that's what we're doing then. Pretty soon we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about Sepultura. We'll be talking about Intronaut. We'll be talking about Demon Hunter. And then
we'll be doing a recap of the podcast convention. We might do some field recording while we're there, but we'll see.
Record some stuff there, see how that goes. And then, so it's going to be cool. Have you guys ever seen the movie Heavy Metal Parking Lot?
I have not.
Well, you're in luck, because at the Rockin' Pod Expo, they're going to be screening it for us to watch, and that's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait to watch that.
Very cool.
And so there's going to be a lot of cool people there. There's going to be some musicians signing, like doing meet and greets and stuff. And I think it's going to be really cool. And it's the first thing like this that I have seen. So definitely feel like we need to be there.
Yeah, and if you want to meet us there, I believe tickets are $10.
$10 to get in. Yep.
Yes.
So we'll be there. We'll be hanging out. It'll be a good time.
And on that note, this has been episode 26 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion, and please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. For all your pro audio rants, including DTS audio, Dolby 5.1, and 7.1, email Jeff at discussmetal.com.
Yeah, you got 7.2 in there too, buddy.
Shut the fuck up, Jeff.
Massive retro vintage video game collection and store inventory. $25,000. Selling a massive video game collection to one lucky buyer. This is my personal collection that I've spent years acquiring, plus inventory from a store that closed over 10 years ago. I focus mostly on rare systems, and I do have some great pieces like Turbo Duo, Turbo Express, FM Towns Marty, boxed, NES with Rob the Robot, SNES, N64, Sega Genesis, sealed PS1, PS2, ceramic white variant, Dreamcast regular and black variant, Halo Edition Xbox and Xbox 360. Total value of the collection is around $40,000. Willing to sell for $25,000 to the right buyer. Not interested in partying out, trading, or answering a bunch of requests for pictures. If you always wanted to open a retro game store, then send your contact information and we can go from there. Do not contact me with unsolicited services or offers.